كنتم تؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر. The first of our salawat in honor of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The second in honor of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. The third with your loudest voices in honor of Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. The discussion concerning imamate or Islamic authority is one of the most important discussions in Islamic thought, and a discussion which requires an in-depth examination, for it is a discussion which affects the lives of each and every Muslim in the world today. A discussion from which many lessons may be drawn and many examples may be derived, and indeed a discussion with a historical basis and a contemporary significance. Contemporary in the idea that when one examines the verses of the Holy Quran, and indeed the narrations of the Holy Prophet, knowing the Imam of one's time is incumbent upon each and every Muslim. As in the Quran you find, for example, a verse which states, يَوْمَ نَدْعُ كُلَّ أُنَاسٍ بِإِمَامِهِمْ. We will call every people with their Imam. And indeed a narration which states, مَنْ مَاتَ وَلَمْ يَعْرُفْ إِمَامْ زَمَانَهِ مَاتَ مِيتَةٍ جَاهِلِيَّةٍ. The one who dies without knowing the Imam of their time dies the death of somebody in ignorance. This thereby indicates that when a person needs to know the Imam of their time, they also need to know the basic understanding of what Islamic authority originally was and how it was defined. On the second level, such a discussion allows us to answer the question as to whether the Prophet left behind a system of Islamic governance, or whether the system of Islamic governance is something which evolved over time. Because as we know, there are two schools when it comes to understanding Islamic authority and its development in the formative period of Islamic thought. There is a school which states that the Prophet had clearly and explicitly designated a successor or announced a successor on behalf of God, and that that successor would lead the government. Or there is a school which says no, that the people were able to form their own government and that the authority figure stems from the choices of the people. Such a discussion will shed light on whether Islamic authority was clearly defined by the Prophet or whether it evolved over time, number two. Number three, importantly, such a discussion allows us to understand who exactly was designated to protect the interpretation of the Quran. Why? Because we know the Prophet, his responsibility was the protection of the revelation of the Quran. The Quran was revealed over a 23-year period. His responsibility was to protect the revelation. The question arises that if the Quran was only 23 years old and the religion was only 23 years old, did the Prophet designate somebody who was able to protect this Quran? Or was it that whoever had studied under him could all make their own opinions as to a verse of the Quran? Because you find that many of the Western academics, when discussing Islamic history, state that Muslims wrote their history not because they wanted to preserve their history, but because of the different debates that occurred as to Islamic authority. Fred Donner, professor of Near Eastern history at University of Chicago, when he wrote his book Narratives of Islamic Origins, wrote that the reason Muslims wrote Islamic history was because of the number of debates that occurred theologically as to whether the Prophet left behind a successor or whether the people chose the successor. He states that when you look at all the different schools in the 3rd century of the religion of Islam, in the 4th century and in the 5th century, you'll find that the main issue they were debating was this issue. The issue of successorship to the Prophet. As if you go to the Ash'ari school, you read the works of Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, or of al-Baqillani, or of al-Juwayni, or of al-Mawardi. Go and read all their works. The majority of their theological works deal with the issue of designation or of succession. If you go to the school of the Mu'tazila, you'll find Qadi Abdul Jabbar dealing with this issue. If you go to the Ismailiyya, you'll find Abu Yaqub al-Sijistani dealing with this issue. If you go, for example, to the Zaydiyya, You'll find Al-Qasim ibn Ibrahim within the Majmu' dealing with this issue. If you go even to the works of Arabic literature and the bell letters, you'll find people like Jahid dealing with this issue. You'll find Shaykh al-Mufid and Sharif al-Murtada within their works, within the Awail, within the Shafi, dealing with this issue. 300 years after Rasulullah had passed away, the greatest scholars of Islamic history from every school, from the Ash'ari school, from the Mu'tazila, from the Zaydiyya, from the Ismailiyya, every school discussed this issue. The issue of whether the Prophet had left behind a successor and whether there was a clear system and whether we had to obey them, or the issue of whether the Prophet said to the people, you decide for yourself and develop the system of authority. And that's why within the school of Ahl al-Bayt, Imamat acts as a pillar. Why? In the school of Ahl al-Bayt, we believe that the Usul al-Din are 3 and that the Usul al-Madhab are 2. And so the total is how many? 5. Usul al-Din are those usul which we share with other schools in Islam. What are they? Tawheed, number 1. Number 2, Nubuwwah. Number 3, Qiyamah. So our belief in monotheism, our belief in prophethood, and our belief in the Day of Judgment. Usul al-Madhab are those pillars of our religion or of our school which we differ with other schools. Namely, Adala and Imamah. As in Tawheed, we agree with other schools in Islam. Nubuwwah, we agree with other schools. Qiyamah, we agree with other schools. Imamah is an area where there is a disagreement between us and other schools in Islam. And our main core issue in Imamat are 3 areas. Number 1, Nas. Number 2, Isma. Number 3, Ilm. Nas meaning that God has chosen the Imams. Isma means that the Imams are infallible. Ilm meaning that they are the most knowledgeable. Yet a question arises. Someone comes to you and says, prove it to me. You say that these Imams of yours are chosen by God and that they're infallible and that they're most knowledgeable. Show me in the Quran, where is this written? You'll find somebody coming to say, it's mentioned in the incident of Ghadir. Yes, but the incident of Ghadir is a narration. The person is asking you for a Quranic reference. He wants a clear Quranic verse where Allah shows you in one verse that He chooses His leaders on earth, that they have to be infallible, and that they must be the most knowledgeable of the community. The clearest verse on this issue upon which you can show the imamat of the Imams of Ahl al-Bayt and that obedience to them is obligatory, Surah 4 verse 59. And I'd want you to memorize this verse, because this verse is the clearest verse about authority continuing from Nubuwwah to Imamah. Other verses in the Quran aren't so clear. Don't think just because you follow Ahl al-Bayt it means that the Quran is that clear. Yes, Imams 12 and we follow them, it's that easy. If it was that easy, everybody in this world would follow Ahl al-Bayt. You have to be able to know which verse to point out, and in your discussions, this verse is the verse, but we need to dissect it in depth. What does the verse state? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu ati'u Allah wa ati'u al-Rasula wa ulil amr minkum. What does the verse say? O you who believe, obey God, obey the Prophet, and obey Ulul amr. The question arises, God here is making something very unique. He is saying that not only are you meant to obey me, you're also meant to obey my Prophet, and I want you to continue this obedience to a group of people known as the Ulul amr. Notice that there are a number of issues in this verse we need to discuss. What are they? Number 1, the Arabic grammar of the verse. Why does God say, Ati'u Allah, Ati'u Rasul, wa ulil amr? Why doesn't He say, Ati'u Allah, Ati'u Rasul, wa ati'u ulil amr? Why does He leave the obedience section on the final part of the verse? That's a very important grammatical area. Another area we need to discuss in this verse, what's the different opinions of other schools in Islam on this verse? Because surely other schools in Islam don't agree with us on this verse. So who did they say are the Ulul amr? Who Allah has said that obedience to Rasulullah and obedience to them is exactly the same. Let's examine this and see where we examine the topic of Imamat. When you look at this verse, as we said, the verse clearly mentions, obey God, obey the Prophet, and the leaders from amongst you. Every school in the religion of Islam came forward with an opinion about these leaders. The first school to come forward to say who the Ulul amr are was the school which said that the Ulul amr are whom? Are the scholars of the community, the ulama. What do you mean? They said the ulama are the beacons of light of the Muslim community. The ulama, they uphold the knowledge of the community. They are the people who look after and preserve the heritage of the community, the principles of the community. They are the people who the Prophet said to us, looking at their faces is a form of worshipping Allah. They are the leaders of the community, and therefore they are the ones who the verse indicates that Ulul amr is the ulama. You say to them, on which basis? They state, because these people are preserving the knowledge of Rasulullah. Therefore Allah, when He says obey Ulul amr, He's saying obey the ulama. No doubt, in Islamic history, there were certain ulama without a shadow of doubt. They deserve the greatest obedience. For example, you find somebody like Abu Hanifa of the Hanafi school. Two of his political stands in his life deserve respect, without a doubt. The first, when he helped Zayd, the son of Imam Zayn al-Abidin, when Zayd was fighting the Umayyads, Abu Hanifa gave 10,000 dinar from his own money towards Zayd. He said to him, "O son of Zayn al-Abidin, go out and fight them. Whatever support you want from me, I'll offer you." The second stand that he had when the Abbasid Khalifa al-Mansur al-Dawaniqi, when al-Mansur said to Abu Hanifa, "I want you to lead salah for us in my new mosque." To which Abu Hanifa replied, "I will not lead salah for a corrupt Khalifa like you." These two political stands without a doubt deserve respect. That this man is not only an alim, but he didn't chase the world chased him. He sought to chase the hereafter. That's when he showed his support for Zayd and he showed his animosity towards the Khalifa. That without a doubt is an alim who the world didn't affect, the world didn't deceive. But the problem is that if we are to say that Ulul amr is the ulama, there are many ulama who the dunya took over and deceived them. If you're going to tell me that I have to obey the ulama, the problem is that there are many scholars who this world deceived them. If obeying them is the same as obeying Rasulullah, then there is a problem. Because when I obey Rasulullah, it's on the basis that Rasulullah wasn't deceived by the world. That Rasulullah managed to capture the world and the hereafter. Yet there are many ulama who unfortunately in Islamic history, you find that they were deceived by this world. Let me give you an example. Shuraih al-Qadi was known as Qadi al-Qudat in the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the judge of judges. People used to say that there's no alim like Shuraih. If he sits in the courtroom, he gives the best of decisions. Many of you would have heard the story when Imam Ali was taken to court by a Christian. When the Imam was taken to court by a Christian, when the Christian said that there was a coat of armor which belonged to him, and the Imam said, "No, it belongs to me." The Christian said, "I'll take you to court." You know the story where the Christian left with the decision given to him. Shuraih al-Qadi was the judge who gave him the decision, as in Imam Ali would employ Shuraih as the alim who would be the judge of the Islamic State. This same Shuraih al-Qadi had reached a level of piety in his life that narrations tell us. He himself would state, "If ever I befall a calamity from Allah, I always thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." Why? He said, because Allah has given me the best religion, and He has shown me people who are in worse situations, and He has given me the patience in this moment, and He still has allowed me the benefit of saying the words, "Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un." That was a man of piety, as in this was an alim who was representing the Muslims, whose taqwa was the highest taqwa. Yet sometimes the dunya can deceive you even if you are an alim. Even if you're an alim, sometimes the glamour of this world overtakes you. And when it overtakes you, your knowledge is not there anymore, your wisdom is also not there anymore. Because this Shuraih al-Qadi, letter 3 of Nahj al-Balagha, Imam Ali writes to him when he finds out he's bought a house on the outskirts of Kufa for 80 dinar. When the Imam finds this out, he says to him, "Shuraih, you are the ulama of Kufa, and now you indulge in the luxuries of this world, while there are people in Kufa who cannot afford anything like this." Imam scolded him that you are of the ulama. how dare you go and perform an act like that? The people expect much higher from you. And that's why, who do you think was the one who put the stamp on executing Muslim ibn Aqil? Ibn Ziyad is not an alim. Ibn Ziyad is a governor. He used to be governor of Basra and Kufa. He needed an alim who he could pay to make sure Muslim gets killed. And Hani bin Urwa gets killed. Hani bin Urwa was the head of the tribe of Madhaj. Shuraih al-Qadi gave the stamp, you can execute them. When the tribe came to Shuraih, they said to him, Shuraih, you are an alim of the ulama. Is it true that you've deceived us in this way? He said, no, I promise. There's nothing wrong with Hani. Hani is safe in our hands. Hani had been executed. And then afterwards, Muslim ibn Aqil was executed, and it was Shuraih al-Qadi who had put the stamp of approval. If the verse, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْكُمْ, obey Allah, obey the Prophet and the Ulul amr. If we were to say that Ulul amr are the ulama, that means I have to obey corrupt ulama like this. The man's an alim, without a doubt, but he's corrupt. He's an alim of the Islamic State, but he's the most corrupt of ulama. Just because he has ilm doesn't mean he has taqwa. There are many in this world who have a great amount of knowledge, but no consciousness of God's presence in their life at all. Their knowledge is unique, but there isn't any presence of God's accountability. If you are to tell me that the ulama of the Islamic world are the ones who are the Ulul amr, I can show you alim after alim after alim who was a puppet for the Umayyads and the Abbasids. Abu al-Bukhtari was Harun al-Rashid's judge. Yahya, the great-grandson of Imam al-Hassan, had fought Harun al-Rashid. No one won the battle. It was like a ceasefire at the end. Harun al-Rashid later on became angry. Why? Because he had written a covenant that now that it's a ceasefire, I won't fight you ever again, even if I'm stronger and you're weaker. He had got angry later on. How did I let this man defeat me? So he thought to himself, what can I do about it? He went to ask some of the ulama. They said to him, have you made a treaty with him? He said, yes. He said, then you can't do anything about it. He thought, let me go to my judge. I've employed him as the judge and he's the alim. So I'm going to go to my judge, let me ask him. He went to his judge, he said to him, I've got a problem. He said, what is it? He said, I wrote a treaty with Yahya, the grandson of Hassan ibn Ali, the great-grandson, that I'm not going to fight him in a war after we've had our war. He said, so what's your problem now? He said, I want to kill him now. My arm is stronger than his, I want to finish him. He said, so what's the issue? He said, but I've got a treaty which is signed that I will not touch him. He said, give me the treaty. He took a knife out of his pocket. He said, why you leave a knife in your pocket, only God knows. He left the knife out of the pocket there, and he took it out and he just ripped it there. He said, is there any treaty anymore? No, there isn't. Go ahead and kill the man. This isn't the ulama that you say are ulul amr. As in, if the Quran is telling me obey Allah, obey the Prophet and the ulul amr, then the ulul amr can't be the ulama. Why? Because the ulama, some of them are pious and some of them may be corrupt. That's the first opinion. The second opinion, which we reject as well, that Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu ati'u Allah wa ati'u rasula wa ulil amr minkum, is that the ulil amr are the four rightly guided khulafa after Rasulullah. That's an opinion which we reject as well. Why? Because of the fact that this concept of four rightly guided khulafa is a myth in itself. The purest proof that it's a myth, that's the first four after Rasulullah, Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali, the biggest proof that it's a myth is that there is no way Ali ibn Abi Talib could be called the fourth rightly guided Khalifa. Why? Because you only have to look at who was in charge of the Muslim states after Rasulullah died to know that they'd never call Ali ibn Abi Talib rightly guided. The Umayyads would say Ali ibn Abi Talib is the fourth rightly guided Khalifa. The Umayyads or the Abbasids. The Umayyads who on their pulpits would revile Ali ibn Abi Talib would come and call out that Ali ibn Abi Talib is the fourth rightly guided Khalifa of the religion of Islam. Or the Abbasids who would write poetry antagonistic towards Amir al-Mu'mineen. It's a complete myth, this idea that there were four rightly guided. Why? Number one, Ali ibn Abi Talib wasn't called the fourth rightly guided Khalifa until 200 years after Rasulullah had died. The Umayyads, there's no way they'd say he's number four. The Abbasids in the first half wouldn't say. Ahmad ibn Hanbal was the first person to say Ali ibn Abi Talib is the fourth rightly guided Khalifa of the religion of Islam. And the biggest proof that there is no way Ali ibn Abi Talib was seen as rightly guided and therefore had to be obeyed was the battle of Jamal and the battle of Siffin. Because if the early Muslims understood this verse as it meaning the four rightly good khulafa are the Ulul amr, and that you have to obey them like you obey Rasulullah, so how comes they came out and fought Ali ibn Abi Talib in the battle of Jamal? If obedience is obligatory to the four rightly guided khulafa, then what does it say about those who fought Imam Ali at Jamal, or those who fought Imam Ali at Siffin, or those who fought Imam Ali at Nahrawan? Ali ibn Abi Talib, 4.5 years as Khalifa, 3 times the Muslims fought him. If the early Muslims thought that this verse meant obey Allah, obey the Prophet, and obey the four rightly guided khulafa, then when he became number 4, they would have said, we can't do anything to you, because in the Quran it's written that we have to obey you. Clearly there's a contradiction, that clearly there is no way this verse could refer to the four rightly guided khulafa. That's why on the 3rd level we reject that it refers to the khulafa. Why? Because in the school of Ahlul Bayt we have a difference of opinion with some of the decisions of these khulafa. As now I do not deny that Abu Bakr or Umar or Uthman, in their own words they said, we gave our opinion and we made mistakes. This is true of them. There is a concept called ijtahada fa'akhta. He gave his opinion, but then he made a mistake. I don't deny that our brothers follow them and revere them as their leaders. But to us, if this verse is applicable, I cannot obey somebody who himself claims that I make mistakes. Because when the verse tells me obey Rasulullah, I obey Rasulullah because I know he doesn't make mistakes. But then how can I claim people who came after Rasulullah who themselves admit that we make mistakes, or who themselves admit that we prohibit something which Rasulullah allows? Let me give you an example. You find, for example, the second Khalifa himself admits, I prohibited something which Rasulullah used to allow in his time. Listen to his words. He says, in the time of Rasulullah there used to be a concept known as mut'ah, an act known as a temporary marriage. I forbid you from practicing it, and I prohibit you, and I'll punish anybody who practices it. To us, when you look at this decision, to us this goes as a contradiction to Rasulullah. Why? Because when I meant to obey the Khalifa, I meant to obey him in the idea that he's looking after Rasulullah's message, not giving his own opinions to the message. As in, if you're telling me that the verse Ulul amr refers to the Khulafa, the second Khalifa himself is admitting there are certain things Rasulullah allows which I prohibit. The question arises, if obedience to Ulul amr is the same as obedience to Rasulullah, then who do I obey in this issue? Do I obey the second Khalifa and therefore mut'ah is haram, or do I obey Rasulullah and mut'ah is halal? Let me give you another example. When I look at Uthman ibn Affan, the way he treated Abu Dharr al-Ghafari. Do you know Abu Dharr al-Ghafari, how he died? Uthman ibn Affan exiled him to the Rabada. He exiled him and he made him die alone, with nobody allowed to visit him. Abu Dharr al-Ghafari, Rasulullah said, Abu Dharr al-Ghafari, only truth comes out from the mouth of Abu Dharr al-Ghafari. Rasulullah said, Abu Dharr al-Ghafari and Jesus son of Mary are on the same level of taqwa. Same. There's no difference between them in taqwa and their consciousness of God. Uthman ibn Affan, because Abu Dharr kept on speaking out against his government, go and study Sayyid Qutb's book, Social Justice in Islam. He narrates the incident clearly. Abu Dharr kept on speaking out against Uthman because Uthman was usurping the money of the Muslims. What does the narration say to us? Uthman decided that I'll exile the man to the Rabada. If you are telling me to obey this man because he is meant to be the Ulul amr, his opinion is contradicting Rasulullah. Rasulullah is telling me, Abu Dharr, only truth comes out of his mouth. This man, if he's meant to be Ulul amr, he's not meant to contradict Rasulullah by putting Abu Dharr alone in the desert. He's meant to treat Abu Dharr al-Ghafari with the utmost of respect. Let me give you a third example. The first Khalifa himself took the land of Fadak away from Fatima. When he took this land of Fadak away from Fatima, we know that the land of Fadak originally belonged to whom? It originally belonged to the Jews of Fadak. The Jews of Fadak saw that the Jews of Khaybar had been defeated in war. When they saw what Ali ibn Abi Talib done at war, they said, you know what, we're not going to fight the man. You might as well just have our land. That type of land given to Rasulullah is different from the land he got at Khaybar. Why? In Islamic economics, if you win a piece of land by war, the spoils must be given out as khums. If you don't win it in war, it's given out as fay, meaning it's given out as the Prophet wants to give it out. The Prophet gave it to Fatima. Notice, Fadak isn't inheritance because she got it while he was alive. Our people always think Fadak was her inheritance. It's not. She was given it while Rasulullah was alive. It's a gift given to her. So when the first Khalifa came and said that the Prophets don't leave behind inheritance, Fatima Zahra said, what do you mean inheritance? It's my land, I was alive. Possession indicates ownership in law. If it's possession in my hands, why are you telling me that I need witnesses? You're the one who's meant to show witnesses against me. Fatima dies angry with the first Khalifa. If the verse in question, Ulul amr, is meant to be the rightly guided Khulafa, well, we find contradictions between their actions and Rasulullah's actions. So therefore, how can Allah tell us, obey Allah, obey the Prophet and the Ulul amr? If the Ulul amr are the four rightly guided Khulafa, then there is a contradiction here. That's number two. The third opinion about the Ulul amr who Allah orders you to obey after Rasulullah are the commanders of your armies. Why? Because the commanders of your armies, you must show them total submission. Al-Bukhari narrates a hadith where Rasulullah was asked that the Ulul amr mentioned in this verse, who we have to obey after you, who are they? Rasulullah said, the commanders of your army at war. You must obey them at all times. I remember Khalid ibn al-Walid. Khalid ibn al-Walid went with Ammar ibn Yasir to an expedition where they needed to get some Arab land. Ammar ibn Yasir narrates that when we went to this land, we got there, everybody in the land had found out that we were approaching, everybody left. He said, in the morning, one of the people of the tribe came towards me. He said, oh Abu Yaqdan. Ammar ibn Yasir's title is Abu Yaqdan. He said, oh Abu Yaqdan, I am a Muslim, but I was of the people of that tribe. The majority of the tribe aren't Muslims and they've left, but I'm a Muslim. I thought, I'm not going to fear. I'm going to stay behind. Do you recommend me to stay behind, or do you recommend me not to stay behind? Ammar ibn Yasir replied by saying, don't worry, stay behind until the morning, I will look after you. That morning, Khalid ibn al-Walid, when he woke up, he went towards that tribe, he saw this man. He said, we have to capture you. Ammar ibn Yasir said to him, Khalid, this man is a Muslim from that tribe. Do not attack him, let him free. Khalid said, you must obey me. Ammar said, on which order? He said, the Quran. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, ati'u Allah wa ati'u rasula wa ulil amr minkum. I am the ulil amr. I am your commander at war, you must obey me. Notice how they use this verse to indicate that any commander at war is to be obeyed. The Muslim commander is the ulil amr. Whatever he orders you, you must obey him. There's a problem. There are some Muslim commanders whose actions left a lot to be desired. They were the commanders of the armies of a caliph, yet their actions until today in history fill the bloodiest pages in history. This same Khalid ibn al-Walid. Do you know Khalid ibn al-Walid and Umar ibn al-Khattab, by the time they died, they despised each other? And even though they're first cousins from their mothers, they despised each other. Do you know why? When Umar heard what Khalid done to Malik ibn Nuwayra, when Abu Bakr became Khalifa, he ordered the Khalid to go and collect zakat from the people. Khalid went around collecting zakat. Anyone who doesn't pay the zakat gets beheaded. If you pay the zakat, you don't get beheaded. If you don't, you get beheaded. Malik ibn Nuwayra was one of the greatest companions of Rasulullah and of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Malik ibn Nuwayra used to collect taxes for Rasulullah. He was from the tribe of Yarbu'. He used to collect taxes on the behalf of Rasulullah from the tribe of Hanzala. Malik ibn Nuwayra, when Khalid came and said to him, you've got to give taxes, he said, I'm not going to give taxes to that Khalifa. I give taxes to the man chosen as Ghadir. I'm not going to give to him. We won't give. He said, you won't give? No. He beheaded him and the whole tribe. And when they beheaded the tribe, do you know who was with Khalid ibn Walid, who was under him in the command? Abu Qatada. Abu Qatada went back to the first Khalifa. He said to him, you see your commander, what he's done? He said, what has he done? He said, your commander has killed a person who used to collect taxes on behalf of Rasulullah. He said, who? He said, Malik ibn Nuwayra.
He said he killed Malik? Yes. When Umar ibn al-Khattab heard Khalid had killed Malik, he said to Abu Bakr, punish him. He said, what do you mean? He said, punish him. We can't have a rule for one and another rule for another. The man has done this. And then he said to Abu Bakr, do you know what else he's done? He said, what is it? He said, the next night he's with his wife, Layla. In Islam, you have to leave an iddah period. You don't go with the wife the next night, do you? The next night he's with Layla. Punish him like we punish everybody else. He said, how can I punish a man who Allah praised his sword? Commander of the Muslim army. If the verse is telling us Ulul amr are the commanders, this is the commander I have to obey? A commander who goes and kills a Sahabi of Rasulullah and then goes with his wife the next night? A commander who has that type of behavior? If you are telling us Ulul amr are the commanders, Umar ibn Sa'ad is a commander. Umar ibn Sa'ad on the 10th of Muharram is a commander. On the night of the 11th of Muharram, do you know what Umar ibn Sa'ad ordered the soldiers? He said to them, oh horse riders, ride your horses and trample on the body of Aba Abdullah. That's a Muslim commander, isn't it? It's a Muslim commander. If the Quran, when it said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasula wa ulil amr minkum, the ulil amr are the commanders, I've got to obey commanders like this. Islamic history is full of commanders who claim to represent Islam, but had some of the most despicable behavior about them. That's the third opinion we rejected. The fourth opinion, the Ulul amr is the whole ummah. Al-Fakhr al-Razi says, when God says obey God, obey the Prophet and the Ulul amr, he says the Ulul amr must be infallible. Because God is infallible, the Prophet is infallible, therefore the Ulul amr must be infallible. He said therefore the Ulul amr is the whole ummah. What do you mean the whole ummah? He said because Rasulullah said, my ummah will not unite on error. It's interesting. Rasulullah said, my ummah will not unite on error. Therefore the ulul amr is my ummah. This opinion is quite absurd, to tell you the truth. Do you know why? If you get 200 cows and 200 cows, you're going to make one horse? That's an honesty. If I now gather the whole minds of the whole ummah, I'm going to have an infallible mind? Iqbal used to say, bring me the mind of 200 donkeys. It does not come near the thought of one human being. Why does he say that? He's saying that your opinion, you're saying that the whole ummah is the ulul amr. So what, we get all of the ummah together, we get all their minds together, we're going to make one infallible opinion? What type of logic is that? What type of logic? As in when Rasulullah said, my ummah will not unite on error. Do you know what he meant? He meant while there's a ma'soom in my ummah, then the whole ummah cannot unite on error. That's the point. While there's a ma'soom in my ummah, then the whole ummah can't unite on error. Otherwise, this ummah united on error 100 times. You think when they fought Ali ibn Abi Talib at Jamal, didn't they unite on error? When they fought Abu Abdullah in Karbala, didn't they unite on error? As in when you're saying that Ulul amr is the whole ummah and that the ummah doesn't unite on error, this Muslim ummah many times united on error. But when there's a ma'soom present, he makes it clear what the difference is between right and wrong. That's the fourth opinion. The fifth opinion is the opinion of the school of Ahlul Bayt, that the Ulul amr are the imams of Ahlul Bayt. That when Allah says to you, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, please understand the analysis. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasula wa ulil amr minkum. Allah is saying, obey God, obey the Prophet and the leaders from amongst you. This was a question posed to our sixth Imam. Someone came to him and said to him, why aren't the names of the Imams mentioned in the Quran? And the sixth Imam replied by saying, that is the number of units which you pray in Salah mentioned in the Quran? I pray Salat al-Dhuhr 4 rak'ah, Salat al-Asr 4 rak'ah, Maghrib 3, Isha 4, Fajr 2. Is it in the Quran? He said no. He said, where is it? He said, it's in the hadith. He then asked him, is the fact you've got to pay 2.5% zakat on your earnings a year in the Quran? He said, no. He said, where is it? He said, in the hadith. Is the fact that you must do tawaf of the Kaaba 7 times in the Quran? He said, no. He said, then where is it? He said, in the hadith. He said, likewise, the Imam's names are not in the Quran, but they are in the Hadith. But the verse for the Imam's names is Surah 4, verse 59. that when Allah revealed the verse, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, ati'u Allah wa ati'u al-rasula wa ulil amr, he said the ulil amr are Ali ibn Abi Talib and Hassan ibn Ali and Hussein ibn Ali and Ali ibn al-Hussein and Muhammad ibn Ali and Ja'far ibn Muhammad, Musa ibn Ja'far, Ali ibn Musa, Muhammad ibn Ali, Ali ibn Muhammad, Hassan ibn Ali, wal Hujjat ibn al-Hassan. That here clearly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, obey God, obey the Prophet and the leaders from amongst you. He says, we are the leaders from amongst you. In another hadith, Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari comes to Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, who are these ulil amr who Allah has said obedience to them is the same as obedience to Rasulullah? Jabir said, these ulil amr are my sons from Fatima. And then he mentioned Ali, Hassan, Hussein, Ali ibn Hussein. Then he said, Muhammad al-Baqir, who you will meet, Jabir. And that's why Jabir met Imam al-Baqir after Karbala. And he said to him, Ya Jabir, send my salams to Muhammad al-Baqir. That's why you find here on the verse, what is the verse implying? The verse is implying that when Allah tells me to obey the Prophet, it's because the Prophet is infallible. Likewise, when He tells me to obey the Ulul Amr, it's because the Ulul Amr are infallible as well. Notice in the Arabic of the verse, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, ati'u Allah wa ati'u rasula wa ulil amr. Why doesn't Allah say, ati'u Allah wa ati'u rasul wa ati'u ulil amr? Why does God say, obey God, obey the prophets and the leaders? Not obey God, obey the prophets and obey the leaders. The wow in the middle of Rasul and Ulil Amr indicates that Ulil Amr and Rasul, their obedience is exactly the same. You don't need to say ati'u again. All you need to put is a wow between Rasul and Ulil Amr. That you know you obey the Prophet, now automatically you must obey the Ulil Amr after him. Somebody replied back with an interesting reply. They used the verse against me. They said, you said the verse, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ati'u Allah wa ati'u rasula wa ulil amr minkum. You said obey Allah, obey the Prophet and the leaders from amongst you. But the verse continues, فَإِن تَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ إِن كُنتُمْ تُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. But if you dispute over an issue, return the issue back to Allah and the Prophet. Do you know what they said to me? They said, why doesn't He say, return the issue back to Allah and the Prophet and the Ulil Amr? It's a good point. It's a sharp point. Because the verse says, obey God, obey the Prophet and the Ulil Amr. But when you dispute over an issue, return it back to Allah and the Prophet. So the person said, you see, the Ulil Amr aren't that important that you say that we must. What you have got there wrong is this, is that when two Muslims dispute with each other, they must return the issue back to the origin of revelation. The Imams of Ahlul Bayt don't bring revelation, they only protect revelation. When Allah said return it back to Allah and His Prophet, He was saying that when Muslims dispute, return it back to where the wahi originated and who the wahi went to. In the religion of Islam, we don't believe the Imams bring in law. We say the Imams of Al Muhammad protect Islamic law. Rasulullah is the one who brought in law. Rasulullah is the one who brought the wahi. Allah sent him the wahi. When the Quran said, فَإِن تَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ. It didn't need to mention Ulul Amr, because all it's saying to you, whenever you have a dispute, return it back to the origin of revelation. And the origin of revelation is Allah and His Prophet. That's why in this one verse, you have nas, you have isma, you have ilm. One verse. You have Allah choosing, you have infallibility, and you have knowledge. Do you know why? Because Allah, when He tells me to obey Rasulullah, it's because He's chosen Rasulullah, isn't it? When Allah has chosen Rasulullah, it's because Rasulullah is pure, isn't it? When Rasulullah is chosen, it's because He's the most knowledgeable, isn't it? That wow next to Rasulullah means that whoever's after them is exactly the same. That they are chosen by nas, And if obedience to them is the same as Rasulullah, it means they must be ma'soom in the same way as Rasulullah. And that's why I tell you, may Allah bless the soul of Allama Tabatabai. He has a line in Al-Mizan on this, which is, as in it's unbelievable. You can't get lines like that unless you are inspired. Do you know what he says? He says, look, everywhere in the Quran where Allah asks you to obey, He always puts the condition that those people who you obey, if they disobey, then this is what you must do. For example, God tells us you have to obey your parents, doesn't He, in the Quran? But then in the next verse He says, but if your parents disobey me, then you disobey them. He says the only obedience in the Quran where Allah does not warn you of disobedience is the Ulul amr. In the verse on parents, Allah says, Luqman says to his son, you have to obey your mother, your parents. But then Luqman tells his son that if you see us disobeying Allah, then disobey us. If Allah thought the Ulul amr could disobey Him, He would have put the condition, but if the Ulul amr disobey me, then disobey them. But the only group of people Allah never mentioned disobedience next to is the Ulul amr, indicating that these Ulul amr can never go against my commands, and therefore they must be infallible like Muhammad was infallible, and that I have chosen them like I chose Muhammad, and that their knowledge is exactly like Muhammad's knowledge, but that their roles differ. Rasulullah brought the knowledge, their role is to protect the knowledge. That's why whenever anybody asks you why is imamat important, you reply by saying, my prophet brought the revelation, my imams protected the interpretation. And that's why when Allah says obey them, it means in every aspect of your life you give complete obedience towards these imams, because these imams are seen as the embodiment of God's knowledge on earth and the embodiment of God's wisdom on earth. They are the treasures of His wisdom and the gardens of His knowledge. And indeed your role when you obey them is that you act like them, in the way Ali al-Akbar acted like his grandfather. Ali al-Akbar, without a shadow of doubt, the hadith says, in similarity to Rasulullah, in what? In khalq, in khuluq, in mantiq. 3 areas. Ali al-Akbar was exactly like Rasulullah in the way he looked, his physical appearance. When people would see him, they would say, that looks like Rasulullah walking on the earth. And in terms of his manners, people would say, that is the manners of Rasulullah. And in the way he dealt with reasoning, they would say, that's the reasoning of Rasulullah. And that Ali al-Akbar truly, when he came forward on the 10th of Muharram to show obedience not just to his father, he was showing obedience to Ulul amr and the beginning of Ulul amr, Aba Abdullah. When he came forward on the 10th of Muharram, one of the ulama narrates that he saw Aba Abdullah al-Hussein in his dream one day. And when he saw Aba Abdullah, he saw arrows surrounding the body of Imam al-Hussein. That alim says, I woke up that morning and I was crying, seeing the Imam in this way. He said, the next day I saw the Imam in my dream, all the arrows had gone except 2 arrows. When I looked at him, I said, Imam, yesterday I saw you, the arrows had surrounded your body. But today when I see you, there are only 2 arrows. He said to him, your tears for me wash away the arrows that sit on my body. But there are 2 arrows that never leave me, the arrow of Abu Fadl and the arrow of Ali al-Akbar. These 2 arrows remain inside me and do not leave me. And how difficult it was for Aba Abdullah. Do you know Ali al-Akbar, one of his greatest traits was his generosity, his hospitality. His mother Layla, she used to say that, you know my son, what he used to do, he used to always ask his mother, oh mother, outside our house, let the smoke come out of the chimney. Because in Arab tradition, if there was smoke coming out of the chimney, it meant that the house was a welcoming place for anyone who did not have any food to eat. He used to tell his mother, maybe there are poor people in the street, they have nothing to eat. I want our house to be a house of hospitality. How difficult was it for his mother when she saw him on the 10th of Muharram? The earlier narrations do not mention her name. name in the event. The later narrations mention her name. Being in the event on the 10th of Muharram, Ali al-Akbar recited the adhan on the morning, on the midday of the 10th of Muharram. It was the last time Abu Abdullah would hear the adhan from his son. The companions had all now passed away. They had all died. It was now the turn of Bani Hashim. Ali al-Akbar came to approach his father. The narrations say to us that normally when somebody would come to approach Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and say to him, it's my turn to go out and fight, normally Abu Abdullah would turn around and say that no, please, they have come to kill me. But the narrations say the only person he didn't stop was Ali al-Akbar. Why? Because Abu Abdullah did not have it in him to tell his son not to go. He was already in an emotional state when his son had reached him. In the narration state, they hugged each other until Abu Abdullah became virtually unconscious from how much he was crying. He hugged him in a way like he hadn't hugged anyone else before. He then came and he said to him, oh my son Ali, go and bid farewell to your auntie Zainab. Do not leave until you bid farewell. He went towards bidding farewell to his auntie Zainab. When he went, he bid her farewell. The later narrations mention that he had bid his mother farewell, and then he came back towards his father, Abu Abdullah. He rode his horse. As he was riding his horse, the narrations mention he was about to leave. His father looked at him. When his father looked at him, he said to him, oh my son Akbar, I want you to wait. He said to him, my father, why do you want me to wait? He said, oh my son, do you know how difficult it is for a father to see his son leave him? He came and he embraced Ali al-Akbar and he allowed him to ride his horse. Ali al-Akbar came and he approached the soldiers in the opposition. When he came and he approached the soldiers, he came out with his famous words, أنا علي ibn al-Husayn ibn Ali, نحن وبيت الله أولى بالنبي, أطعنكم بالرمح حتى ينثني, أضربكم بالسيف أحمي عن أبي, ضرب غلام هاشمي علوي, والله لا يحكم بيننا ابن الداعي. He came out with these memorable words in defense of his father. When he came out, the narrations say to us that when he came out, he fought the soldiers valiantly. When they'd approach him, he'd kill one soldier after another. Every time he'd kill one of the soldiers, he'd turn around towards Abu Abdullah. He killed about 120 of the soldiers. One of the later narrations mentions that his mother Layla didn't know how he was doing on the battlefield. She was sitting in the tent. The only way she could tell how he was doing was by looking at the complexion on the face of Abu Abdullah. If Abu Abdullah was smiling, she knew he was doing well. If Abu Abdullah was crying, then she knew there'd be a situation. She suddenly saw the complexion on the face of Abu Abdullah change. She said, Abu Abdullah, why has this complexion changed? He said, because I see people coming to attack your son. When he said this, she began to cry. He then said to her, Layla, recite the dua of a mother, for the dua of a mother is never rejected. She called out, oh Allah, you returned Ismail back to Hajar. Oh Allah, you returned Yusuf back to Yaqub. Return Ali al-Akbar back to me. Ali al-Akbar returned back to his mother. He embraced her, and then he came near his father. He said to his father, my father, the heat of Karbala is killing me, and the armor is too heavy for me. His father, when he noticed how thirsty Ali was, he took out his tongue, he placed it on the tongue of Ali al-Akbar. Do you know what Ali al-Akbar said to his father? He said, oh my father, your tongue is drier than mine. Imagine how dry the tongue was of Abu Abdullah. At this moment, Abu Abdullah looked at him, he said, oh my dear son Akbar, in a moment your grandfather Rasulullah will quench your thirst from the pool of Kawthar. He went out valiantly and he fought again. This time Umar ibn Saad came out and he surrounded the
the soldiers around him. One of the Arabs called out, I'll take the sins of all the Arabs on my shoulders and I'll break the heart of Abu Abdullah. He came out and he threw a spear towards the chest of Ali al-Akbar. Ali al-Akbar at this moment fell on the ground. The narration said that he called out, oh my father Abu Abdullah, come and help me. Sukaina bint al-Hussein narrates that when Abu Abdullah came out, he wasn't running towards the direction of Ali al-Akbar. She called out, oh my father, you're running in the wrong way. He said to her, Sukaina, do not blame me, I do not see with these eyes anymore. He came towards Ali al-Akbar's body. When he came near that body, he saw Ali al-Akbar sending his salams to him with one hand, but not with two. He wondered why. When he came near, he removed the second hand and he saw that the spear had gone into the chest of his son. The poets narrate that Abu Abdullah would have said, turning round towards Najaf, he calls out, oh my father Ali ibn Abi Talib, you lifted the gate of Khaybar, but you never had to lift a spear from the chest of your son. Oh my father, come and see what I have to do here near my son. The narrations, I'll leave you with this narration. One narration states that when he came near Ali al-Akbar, he saw him smiling, then he saw him crying. When he saw him smiling, he said to him, my son Ali, why do you smile? He said, oh my father, I smile because I see my grandfather Rasulullah coming towards me. At this moment he said to him, Ali, my son, why is it that you cry? He said to him, oh my father, I cry because I see my grandmother Fatima Zahra coming towards me. And I cry because for every tear that you shed, I see my grandmother slapping herself on her cheeks looking at you.
Inna lillahi wa inna alayhi raji'un. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise us with Muhammad and al Muhammad, and to allow us to be amongst those who receive their intercession. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise us with the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman, to allow us to display our obedience towards the Imam, allow us to be amongst the soldiers of the Imam and those who protect the obedience towards the message of the religion of Islam. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a Surah Al-Fatiha, and before it the loudest of salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد